Broadcasting from New Braunfels, Texas, home of the historic Green Hall and the best river tubing in America. You're listening to PX1 Sports Radio, where we cover the hottest topics in the sports gaming world and the world of sports entertainment. Here's your host, Mike Peters.
It is the holiday season, and it is frigid around most of America. Not so much here in New Braunfels, where we're right around 70 degrees. So if you guys are at home and cold and freezing, I hope you guys bundle up and grab some hot chocolate and try to stay warm as we bring you another great episode of PX1 Sports Radio podcast. Today we have EA Sports Game Changer and member of the prominent Sim Standard radio crew, Smitty, joining us today. And we're going to talk all things Madden, and we hope you guys enjoy it. So happy holidays to everyone. Kick back, put your feet up, and listen. Hope you guys enjoy. Well, thanks for being here. We definitely appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. We always get into some interesting conversations on Twitter. Usually when I've been on y'all's show, it usually stays pretty tame, but we can take the gloves off a little bit here if we want, since there's just two of us. I'll start off with the softball, though. What do you think is the biggest thing plaguing Madden right now?
The biggest thing, well, to me, it's between the trenches and player movement and how it needs to be respected.
As far as what?
Like the suction, like as far as the O-line play, players reacting, and how block shedding is basically depicted in the game right now. Instead of it being consistent, or I should say, more of a consistent progressively losing their ground or progressively holding their ground, you have a lot more of you lock up and then release, lock up and release. Now, does it happen all the time? No, but it happens enough that it's a problem, and especially on running plays, how guys just miss their blocks. It's like in some cases, it's like it's a blatant miss on the block, and then they just run upfield, and there's nobody there. Like I don't see players turn around and come back to a defender to potentially block. It's like if they're not in their line of sight upfield, they're just going to run all the way into the end zone no matter what.
It's funny.
And I can have.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's funny. I was looking at something I was going to send to Rex the other day, and it was about that exact same thing. Is my guy basically let his block go, and then turned around and ran upfield looking for another block, and it was like, well, why didn't you stick to that guy further? It was almost like he was like, okay, I've only held him for this long, and then once I let him go, or once the dice roll or whatever determines he's gonna get the block shed, he doesn't try to come back and help. He just runs upfield looking for the next block, which is counterintuitive. I don't know if it makes a huge difference in the result of the game. I mean, if the dice roll says that, okay, this is when they're going to disengage and he's going to make the tackle, I don't know if him turning around and trying to push him out of the way is something that fixes it or not. But that's definitely something that I've seen a lot too, and it drives me crazy when you see that, and it's like, man, you're running down looking for another block and you just let this guy go, and it's frustrating. But that's been something that's been in the game for a while. What do you think is keeping them back from getting something, a better system in place for doing that? Do they have to redo the whole thing? Is that holding them back? I mean, what do you know, and what do you think is preventing it from being better?
I think that it's more of time. Like one thing that I've always said, that myself and Sim, and even Azura, we've all said since very first time we came back, is that these guys, well, even before even going down to the studio, these guys inherited a situation, and that being Rex and Clint and all those guys, they inherited a situation in terms of work that was done prior to their arrival. So it's like, to an extent, you're trying to undo what was done before, but at the same time build up. So when you have things like for example, just the other day on Twitter, you had Clint talking about, like, somebody posted a video clip of blocking that happens on a play action pass where you have your O lineman that'll just stand there in space. They just literally stand there. And you have Clint saying that's a legacy issue that, in terms of the play action pass system, that I definitely want to redo. And he's saying, like, let Rex know so then that could be a priority to be addressed. And I had tweeted, what his tweet. And I was just saying, like, yeah, Clint, Rex, like, games are won and lost in the trenches. Like, please let Clint redo this system. So when you see things like that, it's like, it's not like these guys came into a situation where everything was done fresh. It's new. And it's like, when I see what they do progressively, don't get me wrong for a second. The blocking is definitely worked on. Like, they definitely have done work on it. They definitely have improved on it. The downfield blocking, the trenches, like, the pocket collapses a lot more. So, like, you see the pressure, you sense the pressure a lot more. It does happen in the game, to an honest extent. But at the same time, though, and this is where we get into the whole tuner thing and all that stuff, that's when you see the game take these nerfs and these tunings or what have you. That's what waters down what was there. And guys that fought that call into our show and followed us from pretty much jump, they made a video where they literally shown plays in terms of how the game was playing prior to any of the updates. And you saw a lot of good blocking. You saw a lot of run plays, how the blocking was picked up on pass plays, how blocking was picked up, how the block sheds were. It wasn't as much of the instant shedding that you saw happen. And I'm not saying there's a problem with instant sheds. They happen in the NFL. I have no issue with that. But what I'm talking about is how the game kind of fell back to an extent to where it's more of players lock up and then all of a sudden there's a release of some sort. And while it felt a lot more progressive, a whole lot more of the time, the majority for me, so that's why I say the trenches are a big deal to me, because, and it's, even though it's an old game, but you look at APF and you look at games like APF and Backbreaker. I even did a video on it a few months back. You have it where those guys will collapse. Like, if the pocket collapses, they will do their absolute best to try and stay in front of the defender. Even if they get beat, they'll at least try and chase that D lineman, just like you would see in the NFL. They will chase them. They just don't get beat, and then they just stand in open space, and that's it.
Right.
They get beat, and then they still try to tail up. And if the QB, if they're able to catch up, and the QB moves, adjusts, they could possibly re-engage with that defender.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing you're not seeing that in Madden right now. It's like, once they're beat, that's it. Unless it's an animation sequence, which basically plays out on the edge blocking. If it's not that animated sequence, they get beat, they're pretty much just going to stand there, or they're going to stand where they are, or they're barely going, like, they're not going to give a true pursuit, like go from the blocking stance to just run and try and get back, in a position where they can try and make an attempt on blocking. They just get beat, and that's it. So that's a big problem, and
well, I wonder.
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
couple of things that have popped in while you've been talking there. The first thing is I wonder if it's a situation where it's like the play action system. One thing that a lot of guys don't understand is they kind of have this fantasy that the game's kind of rebuilt from ground up every year, which is entirely not the case. And like you said, it's just new code replaced or added on top of old code. And so, they've had old systems in place and they're just trying to improve them. But when those systems weren't done in a great way, it makes them really hard and limits what they can do. And so I wonder, since we haven't seen things like that where I mean, just the game in general is one of those things where you see, I've mentioned this to Rex, like the biggest thing that I think creates a lot of the things that people complain about in on Twitter and in social media is just that the limited amount of animations. If like the block shed, it's just the one same animation you get, and then after a while, it just feels really phony. The press animation where it's the same animation and the same breaking of that over and over. And I don't know if it's something that's limited to, with the system that they have now, and if it's going to take a complete overhaul and they're trying to do other things in place of it. But that, if they can improve that and get more animations and different animations so it looks more fluid and you're not seeing the same thing over and over again, it's going to go a long way in the perception of what the game is, because people aren't going to get tired of seeing the same animations after a few weeks or a few months and just kind of think, oh, well, this, even though statistically the things are matching up and doing it the way they want it, the player is seeing the same thing over and over again, and they're like, okay, this is getting old, or this is very generic. So I would be interested to find out if that's part of it. I haven't heard Clint mention whether the blocking system in general is like that. Now, the other point that came up is that you felt like at launch it was more organic, and I'll agree with you that I think there was more animations that were in the game at launch that aren't there now. I think we disagree on why they were removed. I wonder if maybe the new animations and things in there weren't attached to something else. That was one of the bugs that they removed, and so they pulled the whole thing, which then gets us back to the situation where we have now, where it looks more limited in the animations. I don't know that for sure, but speculating, I don't understand why they would remove animations that they had previously unless they were attached to some kind of code where they just said, well, we're going to have to remove this completely. It's going to be too hard just to tune it right now as far as a tuner patch. I don't know that for specifically, but that's kind of my guess with that, why we've seen some of that stuff disappeared. But it's a complicated issue, and the blocking, the play action thing that thing drives me crazy, because just to see guys standing around blocking nobody while you're getting sacked is just maddening. And that, hopefully, if enough people go to Rex and say, hey, we need this redone, hopefully they'll work it in. But again, they have a limited amount of resources, and I know people think that they should be able to do whatever they can, but they've only got so many guys that can work on certain things, and they've got X amount of things that they're trying to get in for Madden 18, and each one of them has a set amount of resources. So they have to juggle, on an 8-month development cycle, they have to juggle what they can do and what they can. And sometimes bigger projects like redoing, run blocking or play action or anything like that might get pushed to the side. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that. Now, the other thing that you popped up was, being able to remove tuners and patches and stuff like that. That's one of the things that we disagree on. As far as the blocking and stuff like that, how do you think that's going to fix Madden by giving that option?
Well, with having a mode in there or having it's basically creating the option, because this is the thing, like when we have our disagreements on it, I feel that the tweets and everything that you post up in regards of it basically lean like you're giving more reason as to why there needs to have that separation in there. Because if you look at a game, and I use a good example is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods had that simulation difficulty in there. It had the options in it. So like, let's say that, if you don't want to play with the controls as touch sensitive, then adjust it. But let's say you want to keep all the other factors in there, but you want to make sure the swing mechanic is very easy for you. Then it'll just be custom. But if I want to have it where it's me versus the course, meaning I don't have the grid on the field, I don't have the markers, I don't have the the wind direction indicator like telling me how many degrees and what direction. Like, I want to have all of that stuff turned off. Like, I have an indicator just telling me the wind's blowing a certain direction, but I don't know how hard. That kind of stuff is going to make me more cautious. And then now I got to access all of my tools. I'm going to have to take shot types that I normally don't take. If I have a particular kind of golfer, because, based off the golfer type, they they had it where they had certain shot types in there. Like, you had guys that put up very high arcing shots, and you had guys that swung with power and did more line drives. So I would have to be mindful of what kind of club I use, on the hole that I was on, how I played it, how I approached it. See, in Madden, what ends up happening is when you have these elements like the trenches, like the ball physics, like throwing it into these different, defender situations, we all have to take the same hit no matter what. There is no variable. There is no option to choose. The reason why, like I've said, before with NHL, they have a robust set of sliders that you can actually choose, like, outside of player skill. Actual variables, like you can talk, you have weight, you have their weight, you have their momentum, you have their speed. You can actually vary, like, what percentage of that is going to impact on checking. You actually have sliders that impact the goalie visibility, like move the slider to an extent to see how long it'll take for them to recenter their focus, because you'll have players in their vision cone. Like, you don't have anything like that to impact Madden at all. And you need to have those kind of options. So let's say if I wanted to make player stature account a lot more for their ability to generate pressure on the line, that doesn't mean that I'm throwing skill to the wayside. It's just that I'm factoring in their size. I'm making it more of a factor. You see what I'm saying? And now, if I say I want it on simulation difficulty, now of course, the dev team would have to make the setting themselves out the gate, but I can go in behind them and say, okay, I see what they did, but I don't necessarily like it per se. Let me go ahead and make that adjustment. Now, let's say people go ahead and they scream, oh man, too much pressure, I'm getting sacked too much, I'm fumbling, blah, 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 all that good stuff, just like how they did this year. Now, when they do all that, they come out with the tuner, fine, come out with the tuner. You guys play on that tuner. I'm going to play on factory, and I can choose it. So I could download the tuner, but I don't have to play on it. And then I still got my sliders, and I'm still playing on factory. Well, that's the kind of stuff you need. You got to have that, because Twitter, and from Twitter to Operation Sports, I see every single time they put a tuner out, people talking about how can I put my game back to default, because the gameplay is so much better there. So it's like, if that's being said and you're seeing it across multiple boards,
that's not,
you need the option.
That's not a huge part of the community, though. I think your point is, you have two different points going here. So one is a more robust slider set, and that I completely agree with. I mean, we definitely need more options, and I think comparing that to NHL, I think there's a valid point there that if we have more sliders, that we can tune things. But that's also only going to cater towards franchise mode and, either online leagues or solo leagues or whatever. And that's only a part of the whole Madden experience. When we get into tuners, that's a completely different thing, because tuners are things that are trying to get the game balanced for the majority of people. And that's where the disconnect comes in, because I think we have guys that play franchise mode and they're able to adjust their sliders, and they're complaining because a tuner came out and now their sliders don't function the same way. Well, for me, it's like, okay, go in and adjust your sliders and change it. We started on all Madden. They put tuners out. We adjusted to all pro, and we're basically on default all pro, and we enjoy it. But it took, just changing it. And my biggest issue with the the selectable tuner thing is it's not gonna solve the problem, because we're still gonna have people that are complaining that, the default isn't quite what they want, the new tuner isn't quite. It's never gonna solve the problem, and what it's doing is it's further dividing the development team into pulling them in different directions, which is not what we need. It's not gonna get us in the direction we want to go. They have what I think for me, what we have to do as a community is we have to say, okay, this is what we want. This is what the other side wants. Where can we find a spot in the middle that's going to make us both happy? And then where can we have the options to customize the game for like our offline experience or our online franchise experience? If we have more sliders, we can get everything there. But we still have to have the base game that's going to be played on MUT and online head-to-head and draft champs and stuff like that. That stuff's part of esports. It's part of their competitive gaming. That's going to be at the forefront. So we have to make that game play as close to where we want it to be, with the option for in our franchises to then adjust it. And I think for me, trying to pull them in different directions and say, okay, we need simulation mode, we need regular mode, we need selectable tuners, we need all this stuff. It's just, again, like we talked about, they have only so much time and things that they can do. And if we put things on their plate and we're adamant that, oh, well, we got to have this, then that's just leaving something else. That's leaving something for the game as a whole on the cutting room floor that's not going to get in there, because now they're trying to put in, these other little things that still aren't going to solve the problem. That's always been my take, and that's why every time I see you guys say something like that, I automatically come in and say no, because I realize that aspect. Do you not agree with that? Do you not think that it's going to pull them in different directions, and it's going to leave other things like maybe redoing the play action and the blocking, and that that's going to take away from that? Or is there a different angle that I'm missing there?
Yeah, no, it's not pulling away from it at all, because it needs to be. It's a necessity. It needs to be done. Like
How is it not
the
pulling it
thing
away?
is,
I mean,
well,
it's resource time, right?
well, well, no, because it adds. It's think about this. Okay, you're basically talking about casual gamers. That we're not talking about esports. We're talking about casual gamers. These are the main people that whine and complain. It's not solely somebody in a tournament
Well, but they
that's
paid their money for the game,
that's
though.
complaining for it. But how many of those people complained about double team pass blocking? None. How many people complained about zones needing to be in there? None. How many people complained about the organic nature of the ball and organic physics and everything? None. A lot of casual gamers will buy Madden the way it is, no matter what they do. This is the thing that we've been saying for the longest time. The the small group is us. The small group is what's made this game change. So when you say things like, you know, because we're this small group or we're this small number and everything, yeah, how many people in that small number were talking about the pass placements? Oh, that I could point out. There's a whole bunch of people that talked about that. I didn't see casual gamers crying about that and screaming it to the hilltop, saying, "Oh, Rex." A lot of them cats don't even know who Rex or Clint is. They just know that Madden comes out every year and they're gonna go ahead and buy it. They'll watch the tournament. They're gonna watch these esports tournaments, especially if they don't even have the game yet. They're gonna watch it, go out and buy it, play it just the way it is. All they worried about is playing draft champions and going in MUT and buying packs and all that stuff. They're not worried about being a top gamer. If anything, they'll be looking at those ebooks, trying to piggyback off of that. That's all they're gonna do. They're not worried about, they need to refine the pass blocking, and they need to work on the deep zones because the safeties, they don't react the way they need to. They're not worried about that. Guys like myself and Waikia, you, Sim, Azura, and others that are part of that small number, we're the ones that are talking about that stuff happening.
Right.
They're not worried about it. So
I agree with you in that aspect. We get the main things that get added to the game, but what changes is once the game's out, then it's the masses who are complaining that get things tuned. And I think I feel like the thing that gets lost is you want them to stay with that initial product that came out of the box that guys like us talked about and wanted. But to me, it feels like you forget about the 6 million average guys that bought the game that are like, no, I don't like this. It's too hard. I'm not enjoying it. Like, they have to cater to those guys, regardless if they're the hardcore guys that have the biggest voices in the community. There's still people that paid their money. There's still guys that could spend hundreds of dollars each on MUT if they keep them going. So they have to cater to them to a degree. And so I think that's where I say I don't think we can just go with us versus them. We have to say, okay, this is what we want. This is what they want. How do we find it in the middle? And how can we find middle ground that we can both agree on that makes the game better?
That's why I'm saying, you have to put that mode in there. NHL did.
Yeah,
Why
it's
can't
not
Madden
moving the
do it?
needle for NHL though. NHL sales aren't getting any better because they have that. So it's a non-starter. It's something that's going to take development time, and they're going to put time into it. It's not going to gain any sales.
Yeah, but NHL isn't as popular here as football. That's like bringing up FIFA numbers for the U.S. versus international. Like, I mean, people love soccer overseas 10 times more than they do here. That's just like football. Nobody cares about the NHL All-Star game here in comparison to even the NBA All-Star game. They don't care. They don't care about NHL like that.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if it's going to take, let's say, 50 development hours to implement the system and implement it correctly, and there's already a game in their library that's done this with NHL, and if NHL by doing this hasn't seen their sales have actually dropped from 15 to 16, and we'll see where they are this year, where they wind up, but it's not something that's actually helping them gain sales. So if Madden's looking at that, how are they going to justify and say, well, this is going to take 50 hours of development time, and we have these other things on the board that we want to do. Why are we going to cross them off and spend 50 hours putting this system in that's not going to gain us any sales according to what we've seen in one of our other products? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my concern with it. It's not that I don't want it, wouldn't like to see it. I'm just
think about this. So think about it like this then. You have a mode in CFM. You have gamers that at one point in time, you had Madden that would sell over 10 million copies. They haven't sold 10 million in a minute. So you have millions of people that are still sitting out there not purchasing this game. So you think that clearly Ultimate Team's not getting all of it. Tournament Play's not getting all of it either. So what other mode is there? There's CFM. CFM, we all know, has not gotten the most love and attention. So when you look at a game that needs those authentic elements added into it, yeah, you need to cater to that. But in general, you still need to have the options to cater to those different types of gamers. That's why, once again, pulling up Tiger again, they had the difficulty levels to suit it. You had your rookie, your pro, they actually had a tournament level difficulty, and then you had simulation. NHL has your arcade, they got like arcade, your casual, hardcore, simulation. Like, they have the settings in there that you can pick before you even start playing. So to say that they wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to cater to that gamer, I can't agree with that, because they would be able to cater to all those people. They just got to play on a different level. Now, if they want to play on that higher difficulty, oh sure, by all means, but you're going to have to learn some things.
Well, if we're just talking about difficulty levels, then I agree there. I think if they have a more robust slider set, and then basically each difficulty level is tuned a little bit different. I think one of the big things, and unfortunately this is not one of those things we're going to fix, is one of the big things that's holding Madden back is All Pro and All Madden. But unfortunately, those have been in Madden for so long that we're not going to get rid of them. They're not going to. And so I think if you're talking about, like, we need a simulation mode and it's basically just a difficulty level like All Madden or All Pro, but it's just tuned differently to make the game more realistic, that I'm on board with. I actually posted that on the forum earlier about adding a fifth difficulty level and kind of giving it more. And actually, I think All Madden should be the premier simulation mode. I think All Madden should be like one of those modes or difficulty levels where it's like, if you don't understand football at a high level, you have no business playing on it. It shouldn't be about ratings boost and penalties and stuff like that. It should be about, the CPU recognizing your play calling better and mixing up their their plays better and disguising coverages and stuff like that better, so that the average player can't succeed, but a higher level player is going to, coaches and real players. And then, obviously all pro is a little bit more dumbed down, and then pro would be, or actually I think there should be something in between pro and all pro, but there should be more of and all pro should be like an advanced one. Like there needs to be a pro or a normal in the middle, and that should be like the average play. Maybe that's what you have online play set at, and then all pro is like an advanced version where you have to mix up your plays more and you have to be a little bit smarter player. And then all Madden's like the elite guy, not the guy that can cheat the system, but the guy that can play call better than everybody else. So if that's where you're going with this,
See,
then we're around the same boat, I guess.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the whole point that we're basically getting at. That's why, like, when I see, like dev times being pulled away from it, I'm like, well, if you look at all these other aspects that have been done progressively so far, dev time had to go to all that, yet we demanded for it. So, us being the small crowd of people that, are the small number, the smallest piece of the pie, we demanded it and they did it. So it's like we need that same thing, because every year we're going to have the exact same discussion. Even though, yeah, tournament gamers are fine with it and the casual gamers are fine with it. But you know what? Casual gamers will learn how to play. They'll learn how to play if you put, like, let's say you have a simulation difficulty and it's something that you're able to turn on, like you put it on Madden and then you turn on simulation difficulty. Okay, like it's or that's the play style, like in NHL on the front end you can say all Madden, what play style do you want? Simulation. Okay, bet. That means you about to get that NFL experience. You about to get smacked in the mouth. So when you see people online complaining and saying, "Oh, I'm getting sacked and this is happening and that's happening and I'm fumbling and all that," it's not okay. Now we got to drop this tuner and everybody got to take it. It's you're gonna have to actually learn football regardless of a tuner being put out. You see what I'm saying? Because you're standing in the pocket and you're trying to throw the ball as the defender is hitting you. Like, well, yeah, that's traditionally in Madden for decades we've been able to do that. So you're mentally conditioned to playing it in a certain way. So you're used to that. So of course you're going to complain because it's a change you don't like or you're not used to. But make it so that people actually have to adjust to that. You actually have to refine your game. If you actually have to refine your style of game, yeah, you're going to lose some people. And that's the whole thing. Like, I got to take from what my man NY Kia has said. And I mean, I fully agree with it. And I've said it before too. But if you got your guys like your problems and your serious moles and all that end up falling off because they don't like the fact that the game is not going to be friendly to them anymore, that's perfectly fine. Because you got a whole bunch of other people that'll be willing to step right on up into that spot. Somebody's gonna be in them tournaments. It doesn't matter if it's somebody that doesn't like what's going on or not. It's all about adjusting, because we say that we want all these changes to happen and we want Madden to be this whole new experience and all that. But when the game starts to, and that's the whole thing, the key word is starts. When they start to deliver that, all of a sudden, oh, they need to patch it. They got to turn it down. It's too hard. I can't do. I'm like, this is why when I look at NHL, they need to have those options to pick a tuner and the options to pick what difficulty or what play style you want. Because you have to have that. And to go to the online part, I know you brought that up too. Have the options. Have different tuner lobbies. There's nothing wrong with doing it because Battlefield does that. Like, they don't have tuner lobbies per se, but look at how many options you could pick in terms of what game mode, how many people are waiting to play, what server you want to play on, what location you want to play. Like, come on, there's like 18 million options in there.
Yeah,
it could be done.
It's a little bit different than Madden when you're playing Madden. I mean, if they came out with a fifth difficulty level and they had lobbies, like an all Madden lobby, an all pro, and then like a simulation or a normal, whatever. If they had those, I'm not opposed to that. I think the tuner thing becomes way more complicated, and I don't really like that one. And I think they would spend too much time on it. But I'm not opposed to lobbies and having maybe different leaderboards and stuff like that. We'll switch gears here real quick. If you want to stay on, I have a couple other topics I want to talk to you about.
Go ahead.
That was part 1 of our conversation with Smitty, where we talked about Madden's gameplay. In part 2, we'll talk about franchise mode and possibly an upcoming single-player mode. For more, be sure to follow us on Twitter at PX1 Sports, and you can also find us online at px1sports.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will catch you next time.